Computer ethics and philosopher James H. Moore in his paper argues about the morality in becoming a cyborg. But what is a cyborg? Some people might believe that a cyborg is a half-human, half-machine monstrosity, but that is not necessarily true. A cyborg is considered any person that is aided or dependent upon a mechanical electronic device, be it a prosthetic limb that can heal the several people, or a brain implant that augments memory. This is an innovation that is rapidly growing and becoming a part of society. But what are the moral implications of these prosthetics and augmentations? The first argument that can be raised against the development of cybernetic implants is related to the unnatural nature of the insertion of implants in a human body. If we change the kind of thing we are, humans, what are the consequences for ethics? Moore argues that the banning of the implantation of computer chips, because they are not natural, is not a plausible policy, as this would rule out the use of beneficial non-computer implants such as artificial hip joints and dental crowns. As a matter of fact, he argues that the transformation from humans to cyborg has been taking place with no loss of dignities for years, using as examples implanted defibrillators and pacemakers, which have improved the quality of life of patients since the mid-1970s. This argument, which bases itself on human nature, would also render the benefits of inventions such as bionic eyes as unmoral, and thus leave people with vision disabilities unable to overcome this problem. Dr. Moore also argues that our current society already puts other products of technology such as processed food and medicine in their body, so it shouldn't really be seen as a completely foreign concept to everyone.
As a human being, we strive for enhancement. For much of the time, we are allowed to have enhancement, but it seems like people don't have a freedom to enhance as they wish. That is why the second objection came up is again the policy of allowing therapeutic but not enhancing implants which limit person freedom. For example, laser eye surgery. You can have a normal 20/20 vision, but you cannot correct your vision better than normal. It would seem to insist that patient should not have a freedom to have a supervision. As long as the patient and the other are not harmed, they would have a right to enhance themselves as much as they want. And that's what Kevin Warwick, a professor from University of Reading in the United Kingdom, did. He implanted 100 spikes in his wrist to connect his median nerve with a computer. The computer transfers information and signal to a baseball cap with an ultrasonic transmitter and receiver, give him an extra sensor input, which gives him an ability to walk around the laboratory when blindfolded. Warwick acknowledged the potential risk, but believed eventual benefit of computer implant enhancement outweighed the risk. Although becoming cyborg may eventually raise the question about human nature, it is hard to see how experiments that Warwick performed are beyond straightforward moral judgment. So, if he not causing harm to others and not violating any particular duties, why should he not have a freedom to do it?
Another argument presented by Mr. Moore is the Borg argument. In the classic TV series Star Trek, a group of cyborgs known as the Borg are common antagonists. The members of this alien federation have numerous unattractive appliances attached to them. They function as one collective consciousness. This means that the inhabitants of this faction have no personal autonomy or independent thought. We do not want to end up like them, so the author asks, how do we prevent sliding down the slope to such an existence once we give people the freedom to implant chips? Well, the author presents two possible mechanisms that might lead us to such a state. The first one is the sleepwalk scenario, which argues that due to the increasing connectivity that may be caused by having chips implanted, almost everyone would end up hooked up to the web wirelessly, losing a fraction of their autonomy and independence. From there will be a gradual transition toward a web-human system that could end up taking a life of its own. The second scenario that the author presents is the totalitarian state scenario, which presents a society where those in power could use of implants to keep the population under total control.
People should be able to get computer chip implants even if it's for enhancements. So imagine if one day you feel like you wanted to enhance your smelling ability. Well, you'd be able to just get an implant and then all of a sudden, boom, you can smell for miles on end. It would be cool, but that is a reason why we would be going into an age of cyborgs. With all these enhancements, what becomes natural? How would we control this? There are 3 hotspots, which are privacy, control, and fairness. Computer implants will either enhance or undermine these 3 hotspots.
The next point in which implanted chips can benefit us is control. For example, 1 million Americans have suffered from Parkinson's disease. It is a disorder of the brain that leads to shaking and difficulties with any type of movement. Another 2 million suffered from essential tremor. It is a disorder that causes arm, hand, head, voice, and leg tremor, and it's only getting worse. Medication helps control some patients. Others had to go into surgery to destroy parts of their brain, and the rest had chips implanted. The implanted chips allows them to regain themselves. The device would send electrical signals customized for each patient that electrode in the thalamus. There is a content shock that blocks the tremor. The last ethical hotspot is fairness. There is a positive and negative point of view for fairness. Starting from the positive, fairness is served by implanted chips to help those who are not fully developed to interact with those who are. It allows them to have the same advantages as others. Although implanted chips are made to help people, it may also be used as an unfair advantage. For example, implanted chips will only be improving, and there is a chance that people may use it to cheat. Just as steroids are not allowed in the Olympics, implanted chips may be banned in any championship play. Because implanted chips only get more elite after many experiences and discoveries, the ethical hotspot for fairness will continuously be a concern.
Viewing the distant future. Philosophers like Sater argue that existence precedes essence and that human nature is radically free, meaning we can change our essence by making different choices. By using computer chips, they can help us adjust some of our nature. These chips can be used to greatly enhance our senses and also even probably develop new ones, for example, like echolocation, something that the bats have. These chips can also have our communication become more direct. By that, I mean people in your family will have sensors telling you if they're in danger, and you'll be able to help them out faster or better and understand each other more directly. Another thing you could do with the chips would be that your appliances, you'd be able to turn them off and on whenever you want. For example, if you forget to close the garage, you can remember, all of a sudden your chip will just go and do it. With this also comes the fact that there would be no school or training, because with the chips we'd just be able to implant that knowledge or that physical ability in our body, and then all of a sudden we'd be able to actually do it. The bad part about this is that if people decide not to get the enhancements, then there would be a division of species or a division of classes, so to say. There'd be people who get enhancements daily or get a lot, and they'll become human version 3.0 with the best senses and the best abilities, while other humans are without enhancements and are just normal, simple, plain us, And so then it becomes the idea of the humans that have no enhancements, do they become moral agents or moral patients? Moral agents meaning that these are people that will work, and moral patients are like babies, fetuses, animals that we have to protect because they have no way of protecting themselves. So that'd be a question, would we become moral agents or moral patients? Another thing would be that it would be more difficult to be more individual, because everybody's minds will be connected, and there would be a way that we could wirelessly import data and ideas, and everything would be just connected like it is in a computer system, and we'd just have to find a way to adjust that so that we could still keep our individuality but still be able to make a more connected community.
Ethical Reflections on Cyberstalking by Francis S. Grodzinski and Herman T. Tavani. According to Webster's New World Dictionary of the American Language, to stalk is to pursue or approach game, an enemy, etc., stealthily as from cover, or when one person, the stalker, clandestinely tracks the movements of another individual or individuals, the stalkees. Cyberstalking is merely the same thing, but in the online world. A problem with this is, even after this started becoming an issue, there has never been clear or concise rules for behavior to define them as stalking crimes. This only makes it that much harder to define in the online world. Most of the time, stalking crimes border on, then become confused with harassment crimes. For example, a man by the name of Christian Hunold made a website with a hit list of students and teachers that attended a Massachusetts high school. By hiding his identity through chatting websites, he talked to some of the students that went to the school only to make specific anonymous threats to those students later on. This case has still not been defined as cyber harassment or cyber stalking. Another undefined case involved a man named Gary De La Penta and a woman named Randy Barter. Gary wanted a relationship with Randy, but after Randy shot down his many attempts at dating and romance, Gary anonymously went online posing as Randy, soliciting sex to chat websites. He gave out her name, number, and address, which ended up with many men calling her phone and showing up to her front door. The only way Randy found out about this was when she asked one of the callers why they were all calling. As it is not completely clear, it hasn't been decided if this is a genuine case of cyberstalking or harassment involving the use of internet technology. Neither of these cases ended up with any physical harm to anyone, even with the De La Penta Barter case taking place in both physical and cyberspace. This next case has been cleared as one of the most defining cases of cyberstalking in history, the Amy Boyer case. In 1999, a young man by the name of Liam Ewan stalked a woman named Amy Boyer via the internet, only to eventually murder her later on. He was able to find her address, where she worked, the vehicle she drove, and more. He also made 2 websites completely out in the open. On one website, he posted personal information of Amy, including a picture of her, and on the other one, he described in explicit detail his plans to murder her. Many questions have been raised about this specific case. Was Amy's privacy being violated? Was Amy a victim of online defamation? Did Liam have the right to post information of Amy on his website? Should his websites been protected by free speech? Should free speech be controlled in cyberspace? Are these questions more important because someone was actually physically harmed in the situation? These questions have been ethically evaluated. From the ethical perspective, it's been claimed that cyberstalking is not a new kind of crime or that cyberstalking is a genuine computer crime at all. When asked if cyber technology has made a moral difference, one could say no and argue that murder is murder. The assistance of internet tools within the murder is irrelevant. Also, there's nothing special about cyberstalking since stalking activities have made many occurrences in the real world before. However, one can also argue the internet has made a definite difference in stalking activities. The stalker remains completely anonymous while in the comfort of his or her own home, not having to physically stalk the person, giving them the advantage that had not been around during the pre-internet era. Also, the stalker is able to stalk more than one person at the time, which is impossible in the physical world. Moral responsibility in internet service providers. Should the 2 service providers have permitted Liam's websites and be held responsible for the outcome? There's 2 ethical views that have reviewed this. First is the Spinello view. Spinello distinguishes moral accountability versus responsibility. Accountability. Since the internet service providers did not cause the defamation, they cannot be held responsible for it, although they can be held accountable for it because they provided the forum for it. Also, to be held accountable, the internet service provider must have a capability to do something about the defamation, and if they fail to do something about the defamation once informed about it. According to the Spinello view, there's 3 direct steps that the internet service providers must take. 1. Prompt removal of the defamatory remarks. 2. The insurance of a refraction on behalf of the victim. 3. The initiation of a good faith effort to track down the originator so that the defamation does not reoccur. Next is the Vetter argument. Anton Vetter believes in prospective and retrospective responsibility. Retrospective meaning backward-looking, prospective meaning forward-looking. Vetter believes mostly all internet service provider cases have been prospective, trying to deter future online offenses instead of punishing past offenses. Vedder also claims that if internet service providers have prospective responsibilities, then we must hold them accountable for having retrospective responsibilities as well, meaning they should be held responsible for the speech communicated in their provided forums. If we apply Spinello and Vedder's arguments to the Amy Boyer case, the internet service providers would be held morally accountable if they were capable of limiting the harm that resulted to Amy. In the court case Stratton Oakmont v. Prodigy Services Company, Prodigy was held legally liable since it advertised that they had editorial control of their websites. Prodigy tried to defend themselves by saying they shouldn't be understood as the original publisher, but as the common carriers. They provide conduits for communication, but not the content. Internet service providers are no longer held accountable for the content after the Section 203 of the Communications Decency Act was created. They no longer choose to have editorial control. Instead, they monitor and filter the website to the extent that they can. Do ordinary internet users have a moral right to warn cyberstalking victims like Amy Boyer before it's too late? Should we assist the victims because of legal regulation or because it's morally the right thing to do? This question has been broken down into two sections. The first one is ethic of care. If one believes that the purpose of morality is to alleviate human suffering and to promote human flourishing, then clearly we would seem obligated to prevent harm in cyberspace. Said by Carol Gilligan, complying with a care ethic, individuals would assist one another whenever it is in their power to do so. Adopting an ethic of care in cyberspace would mean that individuals, ordinary internet users, would be prone to assist others whenever they can help to prevent harm from coming to them. From this perspective, individuals would assist one another even though there may be no specific laws or rules that require them to do so. The second section is a duty to assist. A duty to assist can be perfectly summed up in the Kitty Genovese case of 1964. Genovese, a young woman, was murdered on the street outside of her apartment building in Queens, New York, as 38 of her neighbors watched. None of her neighbors called the police during the 35-minute period stabbings. Some referred to this refusal to assist a neighbor in critical need as the Genovese syndrome. Police involved in the Genovese case believed that the witnesses were morally obligated to notify the police even though there may not have been no formal law or specific statute requiring them to do so. Just like the Genovese case, people that came across Liam's websites did nothing to warn or inform Amy Boyer. Because of what happened to Amy Boyer, and because of what could happen to future victims of online stalking, ordinary users, as members of an online community, should adopt a notion of moral responsibility that involves assisting fellow users. Doing so would help to keep cyberspace a safer place for everyone, but especially for women and children who are particularly vulnerable to stalking activities.